It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, I really wanted to put this off at least one more week. If you are not watching on YouTube and just listening, you're not getting the full experience here. I am wearing the hashtag hater hat that Alan got me for Christmas. Steelers season coming to an end yesterday in Buffalo. Felt appropriate. Alan, how was Buffalo? Not the game. Let's get away from the game for a second here, but the environment, of course. Everybody knows this game getting pushed back today because of the weather. Just how was Buffalo in general before we dive into the game itself? Also, if you are not listening, this is why you're not getting the full experience, because Alan just got up and was walking away.
Buffalo was man, it was wild. I've never experienced anything like that in my life in terms of just pure blizzard conditions. So we went up Saturday as we were planning on. Even though it was postponed, we just felt like it was better to be up there. Mm-hmm. Sunday, the lake effect snow is intense, but it's very sporadic. And so where we were at our hotel by the Buffalo airport, it wasn't really snowing that bad. We wanted to really be able to show people what it was like at the stadium, why they weren't playing. We tried to drive to the stadium. It took us most of the day to get to the stadium. It's about 14 miles from where we were staying to the stadium. It took us about 4 hours to get there. We had to try multiple routes because there were places where there were too many stuck cars that were blocking the roads. The visibility was a zero at times. I couldn't see the end of the hood of the car. And you just had to stop and wait until it maybe cleared up a little bit and you could go. The picture, if you look up my social media, I took from the gate of Highmark Stadium, where you can just sort of make out the stadium in the background, maybe 100 yards from the stadium. And honestly, I had to wait for a little bit for it to clear up to be able to take that picture so that you could see it. Brutal conditions on Sunday. And then Monday, it was nice. I mean, it was cold. It was freezing cold, but nothing at all. And in terms of precipitation, and obviously got the game off without a hitch. And so I think they made the right call, but what an experience that was. Never been through anything like that.
Is this the one you're referring to?
That's the one right there, man. Whew.
Yeah, there's definitely an outline going on kind of back there, but yeah. Wow.
That's it's like I said, it's about 100 yards from the stadium right there. I mean, that's the main entrance to the stadium, and you can barely see it. It was crazy. I've never experienced anything like that. If people could they have gotten the buses of the teams in and enough people to maybe make a TV broadcast? Probably. I mean, we got there in one 4-wheel drive. We found a way. But Emily Jean Greco from Channel 4 said, she tried. Her and her producer tried to get the stadium, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't find a way to get in there. The roads were just impassable. And so, any number of fans attempting to make it to that game would have made it immediately impossible for travel whatsoever, because any road that had more than 5 or 6 cars on it was blocked with stuck cars. You just couldn't see. People would just drive into the snowbank or get stuck in the. I mean, there were feet of snow in the ground on the road. I've never seen anything like that before in my life.
Yeah, wild scenes. With the game getting pushed back. So the game gets pushed back, and then it does take place on Monday, Alan. Monday at 4:30. What a wild just season in general, to be honest with you. When you look at 3 Saturday games, this random Monday because of this getting pushed back, couple Thursday nights in here, wild schedule to begin with. But this game, I don't know where you want to start with it, whether it's offense, defense, just a general outlook of the game in general. I'll kind of follow your lead here, but takeaways, did it go how you thought that it was going to? I mean, the Bills jump out to a 21-0 lead before the Steelers really showed that they had a pulse in this one.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily expect that. The one thing I thought Rudolph had done a pretty good job of so far was taking care of the football. And then, George Pickens fumbles one away. Pat Fryermuth's very lucky to not fumble one away. Mm-hmm. Really, honestly, could have been worse. I felt like the game could have been over in the first maybe 15 minutes. I don't think it was anything like it's not like the Bills were doing anything special or different or unusual. They were just playing their usual stuff at a very high level. We talked last week about I felt like if there was a chance for the Steelers to win this game, the Bills were going to have to play along. They were going to have to let them in it. They were going to have to do some dumb stuff, and they just didn't. And I just thought a far better team was on display. And look, that Buffalo offense, when it is playing well, is among the best in the league, and they were. And they were moving the ball at will. The Steelers don't really have personnel answers for guys like Dalton Kincaid. Banged up. They didn't have TJ Watt. They weren't able to find any splash on defense. But, yeah, the game went pretty much. I mean, look, if you go read my pregame primer right now, I thought Buffalo was still going to be able to throw it even though it was cold. I thought that the Steelers were going to have a hard time protecting Mason Rudolph and that they were going to get into these throwing situations that he just hadn't been in. I thought it was okay. The interception was bad, but it really was just that they didn't have any success in obvious throwing situations, which you can't go through a season only throwing when you're catching people off guard. You have to be able to have success in obvious throwing situations. And then they also didn't have any success in obvious running situations. Najee Harris made some comments about them running into some stacked boxes, and it's true, but they had just run into stacked boxes all game the previous 2 weeks against the Ravens and the Seahawks, and they had a lot of success with it. They didn't have any success in this one. And I think that was probably when that happening, and then the Steelers not making that adjustment is maybe the one big sort of coaching thing that I saw come out of this game. But I really thought my big takeaway was the team that was obviously better on paper played better on the field and deserved to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, no takeaways, right? Like we thought the Steelers were going to have to take away the football if they were going to have a shot in this one. They give the ball to Buffalo twice, like you mentioned with the Freiermuth one, could have been 3 times, and they didn't turn over the ball from Josh Allen and the Bills' offense. So I think that is probably one of the things that stuck out to me most. Looking at you mentioned the run game, Jaylen Warren 8 for 38, Najee Harris 12 for 37. I mean, their longest rush of the game, a George Pickens 15-yard rush. Even in the receiving game, outside of that 33-yard play by Freiermuth where he fumbled at the end, but was lucky that his helmet, while out of bounds, touched it. They didn't have another explosive play even in the passing game. So there was just no explosive plays created from this offense.
Yeah, I thought they were a little bit conservative in their play calling, but I thought just in general, like what had worked the last couple of weeks didn't work, and they weren't able to get to something else fast enough. And then the turnovers, you can live to work through, oh, this isn't working, we can figure it out as long as you're punting the ball away. When you start turning it over, I think that's when it really starts to become a big problem, and it did for the Steelers. And the 2 turnovers to 0, the 14 points off turnovers. I mean, I think if you want to make it simple, that's pretty much the whole game.
Yeah, and looking at the Bills offense, I mean, Josh Allen goes 21 to 30, 203 yards, obviously the 3 passing touchdowns, 79 yards on the ground for Cook, 74 aided by a 52-yard rush for Josh Allen on the ground. And then in the receiving game, Stephon Diggs is the only guy that had more than 3 receptions. We were curious what it was going to look like without Gabe Davis, who was going to be the guy to step up. I guess you could say probably the tight ends. I would have expected that Dalton Kincaid would cause some fits for the Steelers defense. Didn't see an obvious fit of a guy that would be a solution for that question that the Bills were going to ask the Steelers defense. So, yeah, I think in the passing game, they pretty much did what I expected them to do as well.
Yeah, that really highlighted the Steelers' need in going into the offseason that they have to find a tight end answer. That guy had been Terrell Edmonds for them over the years. Maybe they thought that was going to be Keanu Neal, or maybe they thought it was going to be Damontae Kazee. Heck, if he was healthy, I think they would have tried Trenton Thompson. They absolutely have to find another tight end answer going into the 2024 season on defense, whether that's an athletic linebacker or another strong safety. They have to find a way to fix that problem. It's one of the maybe under. I mean, look, everybody knows they could use another corner, they could use a tackle, they could use a center, but I think finding a defender that can take away opposing tight ends and not make the Steelers use Minkah. It's one thing to say like, oh, just use Minkah Fitzpatrick there. It's like, well, if you're using your free safety for that, are you just playing man across the board then? Are you just giving one-on-one coverage to Stephon Diggs? Like, you don't know where Dalton Kincaid's going to line up. You can't try to play zone and then make it fit what the offense does. It's either you've got to be able to have multiple guys that can cover a player that moves around, or you're going to have one guy staying on man coverage. But if it's going to be Minkah Fitzpatrick in man coverage, that means you're not using on anybody else. I mean, that's a win for the Bills too. I just don't think that's the way the Steelers can draw it up. They just did not have answers for Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox, and really felt like that was probably backbreaking for the Steelers defense.
And that was right out of the gate. Dawson Knox on the first drive, catching a touchdown, made it look very easy. And like I mentioned, Bills jumped out to a 21-0 lead here before the Steelers kind of made it a game. You said maybe you didn't see that aspect of it coming, getting out to a 21-0 lead. But, just in terms of the way that the game went in general, you mentioned in your primer, it was pretty much how you thought it would go. Did it align, though, in terms of the way that who was contributing to this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it was pretty much what I thought was going to happen there. I thought Kincaid and Diggs would be the primary focus of the passing game. I thought the Bills would throw. Maybe the thing that surprised me the most was Steelers' inability to run the ball. I don't think that Buffalo run defense was that good, and they had been blocking really well for Najee Harris. It just didn't seem like they got the same kind of push up front that they had the last couple of weeks against a front seven that is honestly like worse than what the Ravens, even though they weren't playing all their starters. Like, I think the Ravens front seven that played against the Steelers a week ago was better than the Buffalo front seven. I just thought the Buffalo guys played better. I didn't think it was mysterious. And then, the difference between Josh Allen and Mason Rudolph was significant in this game. And I don't think there's a whole lot that Mason Rudolph could ever do to change, the significance of that difference. That's just who they are. I don't think the Steelers had enough in other places to make up for their talent disparity at quarterback. And Allen, credit to him, he didn't make the big mistake. He didn't do the thing that he had done all year in terms of trying to do too much, turn the football over and keeping another team in it. It's never a good thing when your game plan just involves waiting for the other guy to screw up. Like, if he doesn't, then you don't have a chance. And that's what happened to the Steelers.
I did feel like, we saw Buffalo lose even some more bodies in this one due to injury, but going into it, they were pretty banged up, and no Rasul Douglas. I was curious how that would go. I thought there was a lot of meat left on the bone for the Steelers passing attack. Like, going back and watching it, they didn't have a guy on that Bills secondary that was keeping up with Damontae Johnson. He was winning pretty handily at the line of scrimmage, and I think that they left some meat on the bone in terms of because he had 4 for 48 with a touchdown. I think that could have been inflated a lot more with what I watched back on film.
I thought the Bills did a nice job of disguising their coverages, and I didn't think Mason Rudolph did as good of a job as he has been doing of finding the open guy. There was one, I think it was right before Calvin Austin eventually scored, where he threw the ball to George Pickens in the end zone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Damontae Johnson did a guy within 20 yards of him, and they were sort of in the same visual plane. Like, if you were looking at one, you should have been able to see the other. He just totally missed him. I thought he stared some guys down. I thought he stared Damontae Johnson down on the interception, where it just seemed like he was looking one way and really waiting for a guy to come open. There was like a throwaway on a third down, which you don't want to see. I didn't think it was a particularly good read. The ball came out of his hand okay, and he was under pressure a lot. But I just didn't think he had been the same guy that we saw earlier in terms of being able to find the open guy and come off a read and make another one. Some credit to Buffalo for their ability to disguise coverages. So that really helped them deal with their talent deficiency in that area. But you can only disguise for so long. There should have been open plays for the Steelers to make in the passing game, and they just never found them.
Maybe it's just a product of, maybe this is the fallback anytime that things necessarily aren't going well, but they stay in it. So maybe I'm really scrapping the bottom of the barrel here to come up with a compliment. But I do appreciate the compete level, especially from Mason Rudolph the entire way through.
No, I asked Mason about that after the game. It felt like, what was it, about 8-9 minutes in, they were down 21-0. That they could have phoned it in right there. And honestly, the reporter in me was like, oh, you could get me home an hour earlier if you just threw one pick six here. Like, let's, don't make this a game and still lose. Like, don't do that to me. Like, come on now. If you're going away, just go away. Instead, they did make a game of it. And look, cost me an extra 2 hours of sleep. But like, whatever. I thought that was a real credit to their competitiveness and the sort of intangible things that we've seen go sideways for this offense a lot throughout the course of the year. They didn't in this game. Thought they stuck together in a big way. And, I wrote that I felt like they grew up throughout the course of the season on offense. So in some significant ways, I'm not saying all their problems are solved, but it does feel like they learned some lessons throughout that 3-game losing streak and through the adversity of this season that may carry over. Talked to Dan Moore after the game. Obviously the Steelers went on a long run at the end of last season, went on another run at the end of this season, but they weren't really able to carry over, last year's into this year. Is there a reason to think they'll be able to do it again? And, what he said was, every team is different and you can't really do that. But what you can do is like each guy can take some lessons that they learned and just be better. And I think like when I look at a guy like George Pickens, like there's good reason to have some hope that he has learned some lessons over the course of this season and can find a way to be a more consistent contributor for his team and a more consistent teammate going forward.
Yeah, certainly. Alan, I want to spend the second half of the show talking about Mike Tomlin. I think that everybody saw it was your video actually that was kind of going around
the whole
on
world
social
had
media.
my video.
Yeah. Of Mike Tomlin walking off when asked about he has 1 year left on his contract. He didn't really let the full question get out there before walking off the podium. Personally, I found it hilarious. Don't know how everybody else took it. Just giving you my point of view on it. And then today we see a report from Mike Garafolo that basically has said that he's talked to the team already and said that he plans to be the head coach in 2024. So where are we at with this? I mean, are we to believe that that is the case? Have you talked to people that can kind of confirm that, or are we still kind of waiting to see?
Well, I've kind of run the roller coaster here in the last 24 hours.
Okay.
If you'd have asked me before the game yesterday, I would have said, yeah, he's probably coming back. I did not know what to make of that response to that. He didn't even get to the question, like you said.
Sure. Yeah.
I've never seen him do anything like that. There was some consternation from, let's just say, higher level Steelers people after that happened. There was some scrambling going on about what that was in terms of people from the front office and above. And that to me was like is this different? Is there something here?
Yeah.
And so I really didn't know what to make of that. I still am not really sure I know what to make of that, other than it was just like very unprofessional. I know that I can make of it. But it sure seems like from talking to people in the locker room that the players anticipate that he will come back, and that sort of echoes what Mike Garafolo was reporting. And so I don't know, man. I'm not really sure what that interaction means, if it means anything going forward. It was certainly bizarre, though.
Yeah, I wanted to get your perspective on that because, like I said, I found it hilarious. You are actually somebody that covers the team, though. I don't know how you would take it if you were the one asking the question and got a non-response in that fashion. To me, the way I was looking at it was he's going to talk again after the season. I didn't think that that was necessarily the setting right after a playoff loss to ask that question.
Well, two things there. One, I mean, if that was the response to my question, I would take that as a personal insult. That's the way I would take it.
Okay.
I think that's how Brooks should take it. Second thing, in terms of the timing of the question, man, it's got to come up. I mean, it can, every single coach that lost this weekend who has any type of uncertain future was asked in that press conference about what they think is going to happen.
Nick Sirianni just last night as well.
Nick Sirianni was, Mike McCarthy was. I mean, it's going to come up. Every coach knows it's going to come up. It almost felt like a calculated response to the question that he knew was coming. I'm not sure why that was the chosen response. But it's coming. And furthermore, like every player in an uncertain circumstance was asked the same question or a version of what was going to be the question last night as well. I mean, Cam Hayward, I'll be honest, like what I asked Cam Hayward was a far tougher question than what Mike Tomlin was going to get. Like, hey, there's some reports about you stepping away. Any truth to that? Like, I mean, I asked Cam Hayward, like, how hard would it be to retire not winning a Super Bowl after spending your whole career in organizations with guys that had won it? I mean, that's a tougher question. I'm sorry, like it is. Mason Rudolph asked questions about his future, given his circumstance. Way tougher for him to answer that. And so, you got to know that question's coming. It's got to come. And did it have to happen right then? No, but it's not unusual or unexpected for that question to happen, and especially considering the length of time that people have been speculating publicly about Tomlin stepping away. And we've talked on the show who's been doing the speculation. Like the fact that it's been Jay Glazer that seems like has been driving a lot of this conversation about Mike Tomlin's future gave it a lot of credence that it would not have had otherwise. So, Mike, if you're mad about the way the situation played out, thank your boy. Don't get mad at the rest of us, because that's why people took it seriously, when maybe if it had been someone else, they wouldn't have. And, I don't know. It was certainly unlike anything I've ever covered before. I know that much.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, to be a fly on the wall the next time that he and Jay Glazer have a conversation, because I wonder if he's going to be upset at all with the way that this has kind of played out due to that.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't make sense, right? Like it just doesn't track. If his feelings all along were that he wanted to come back strongly, that he never considered stepping away, where's Glazer getting that information, and why is he putting it out there if that's not what Tomlin believes or wants to be public? Like it doesn't make sense, right? I still don't have a good sense of what actually happened there and why. Certainly seems like Tomlin said he wants to be back now. To players, I don't know Mike Garafolo well, but I believe his reporting, and I've heard similar things from players in the locker room today. And so I assume he's going to be back, but man, it's a strange ride.
So this is, again, complete speculation on your part. Is it him being back in 2024 to coach out the last season of his contract, or do we see an extension beforehand, in your opinion?
I would be astonished if he comes back and coaches the last year's contract. I don't see how you hire an offensive coordinator with the head coach on a 1-year deal.
True. Yeah, we brought that up on here before.
I think he would come back. I think if he would come back, it would have to be with a contract extension. Smitty, I get that the fan base is pretty divided on Mike Tomlin in general.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But specifically this felt like there was a good amount of vitriol in the reaction to the way he answered or did not answer that question. Did that change anything for you about the way you feel about Mike Tomlin, or whether he should be the coach going forward?
No, I think like I said, I would have expected that question. Not saying that it's not an appropriate setting or anything like that. Like you mentioned, he knows that question is going to be asked at some point. I figured that would be something after the season that he would get asked, but it happened, and I was surprised by the non-response and him just walking off. As opposed to him just saying, like, I'm not going to talk about that right now or something. Like, even that would have been more Tomlin-like, in my opinion, than what he actually did.
Getting a no comment would have been no one would be talking about it today.
Right. So that kind of, like I think you were talking about, gave it a little bit more credence to like that thought being in my mind for the first time in his tenure, where I was like, maybe this is the end of the road for him in Pittsburgh. I kind of started to feel that way last night, and then like to have this entire thing swing back the other direction on the pendulum today with this Mike Garafolo report. I'm back on board, but I need to see what the offensive staff looks like. That's really my biggest question mark going into next season, is going to be the offensive staff. We're going to talk about that pretty much all offseason until that's taken care of, I think.
I wonder what the perspective of someone who maybe did not want Mike Tomlin to be back anyway.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Their reaction would be, if you're a member of our audience and that's where you are, leave us a comment. Let me know. I'm just, in fact, in general, like, there My mentions were so flooded. So if you DM me or you messaged me last night, I didn't get it. But like, are people generally okay with it? I know the media, nobody
Well,
really likes us or feels bad for us, but
yeah.
are people okay with this? And did it change anyone's mind? I mean, it felt like an out of character reaction, right? Like it just did. Like
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, for sure.
and I don't know. Eh, I wonder if there are people that were like, yeah, fine, bring him back, to saw that think now, man, do we really want this guy? I don't know. I think that's an interesting.
I wonder, how much is in your mind at all. How does he carry himself after a win as opposed to a loss? There's a pretty even keel. Is it different? Because like I'm wondering, say that they, win their last game of the regular season, but like at that point they knew they weren't going to be in the playoffs or whatever. Say they finished 9-8, but they lost a different one and won that last game, and then got asked that after the finale or something like that. Do you think it's the same type of thing, or do you think it's more about him being so frustrated by just losing a playoff game that's what the response was?
No, honestly, I feel like he's generally more elaborative when they lose. Now, maybe not in questions about himself, like, because that's a little bit different. But like, if
Yeah.
you ask him an in-depth football question when they win, he'll give you a 4-word platitude. Be like, yeah, we did good at that, but that's the requirements of winning. But if you ask him to break something down about a loss, he's generally more willing to go in depth and talk to you about why things happened after a loss than a win. I don't know. To sort of circle back to my original comment, I don't know if there's some personal animus between him and Brooke that preceded that. I don't know. I've never gotten that sense from Brooke's perspective. It's bizarre, and there were a lot of disgusting comments in my feed about the place of women journalists in this town, and whether you like Brooke or whether you think she does a good job, like that's a perfectly fair question that anyone in that room could have asked, and
Sure. Yeah.
and it was expected that someone in that room was probably going to, and so and didn't care for a lot of the reaction extremely negatively towards her. Like I said, like I feel like I asked harder questions to the players than what I assumed she was going to ask, because she didn't even get to ask.
Well, I saw some of it because being that I reposted your video,
Yeah,
people were responding that follow me, that I was showing up on their timeline responding to me, so it was tagging me and you in it. And I was even seeing some of the people be like, not the right place, not the right time, like all these things. People were saying like, oh, Brooke Pryor again, or like, so yeah, I don't think as necessarily as nasty as what you saw, but yeah, there were certainly some people that were saying some questionable stuff that I came across as well.
yeah,
It's unfortunate.
yeah. It's unfortunate, but I and look, haven't asked them about it like that. I feel like that was another. I saw some people say like he's gone over this. Like, we have not talked to Mike Tomlin about his future since training camp. It has not come up at any point this season.
Yeah.
Not like this was the 30th time he's been asked what. In fact, these reports started circulating before his last pregame press conference last week, and it did not get brought up in those pregame press conferences. It's not like this has been a repeated topic of conversation where you get a frustration level over answering the same question over and over again. We asked Mike about his future when it became clear that he wasn't going to get a contract extension before this season. And that it's hasn't been an issue until now. It hasn't come up. And so I was really, strange to see so many people say, oh, they should know better. He's already addressed that. Like, no, he hasn't. And certainly not since it was reported by his close friend that he was considering stepping away. It was definitely not brought up. And so very strange.
The last thing that I recall, like when Tomlin talking about like his future, was when he had to shut down the stuff about him going to college coaching. The never say never, but never comments. Like since
There's the booster with a big enough check. I love that quote. That was after the 2020 season, so that was 3 years ago.
Yeah,
so
I don't recall people bringing up his contract status.
And no one is suggesting that he was going to go coach college. Like, yeah, I think he made it pretty clear that he's not going to do that. I would agree with that. Like, I'm not going to ask him that question again. I think he was very crystal clear about that response. But, I certainly is something that the world has been wanting to know about what Mike Tomlin thought about his future beyond the 2023 season. It had been publicly speculated at large, and I guess now we know. It seems like that was a harder than necessary route to take to get here.
Absolutely. We'll see if we get any more information within the next 24 hours. I can tell you for sure tomorrow, Alan, one thing that I want to talk about is Cam Hayward, because we didn't discuss him at all. You brought up briefly that you talked to him, so put that on the ledger for sure tomorrow. But Alan, tell the people they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH, PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And there's all my snowy videos from Buffalo.
Which, by the way, are like some of the best performing videos that have been on the YouTube channel, where you just giving weather reports.
Yeah, if things get real stale this offseason, I'm just going to go storm chasing. I feel like that might be the actual ticket here on YouTube.
Hey, I mean, the numbers don't lie, so they're there. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Leave us a 5-star review if you were listening somewhere else, whether that's Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find us there. Leave us a comment down below. Let us know how you feel. What was the one? Oh, you wanted to know how people felt about the Tomlin thing. I was just saying, we need people's opinions about that. Regardless of what side you went into yesterday on, whether you wanted Tomlin back or whether you didn't want him back, did that change your perspective at all? And where are you at now? Let us know in the comments about that. Ask us questions. Of course, we will get to them throughout the week. We're going to have a lot more time for questions coming up, so be sure to get them in as well. I'm Zachary Smith, PGH, for Alan Saunders and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.